Welcome to the Retail Reality Show.
Welcome to another episode of the Retail Reality Show. Today it's a real pleasure because I have a retail rockstar, Sumit Srivastava. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
That's correct.
VP Omnichannel. So Sumit has a huge history in retail. We will get to that in a second. And I'm really glad we can talk about great things today. We had an amazing dinner yesterday evening and we already touched on many of the topics you're working on currently, but why don't you quickly introduce yourself, Sumit?
Sure. First of all, nowhere close to being a rock star. Thank you. You're too kind. I think I've grown up in retail. So growing up in Dubai, I remember weekends with Dad. Used to be going to the grocery stores because Dad worked in Unilever and organizing the planograms, making sure the shelf is right. So I kind of feel like I was just born into retail to a certain extent. And also the fleeting reality of how, as customers, our preferences change. And then from a retailer's perspective, trying to keep up with that has always fascinated me on how you build that, right? Nice. So right from the beginning, I think I've always just wanted to be in retail forever, right? Some sort of retail. And as the market has evolved, I think we've now the discussion topics are always e-commerce, omnichannel, marketplaces, and AI. So I think that's where we're at today, and I'm just very fortunate to be part of this whole mix.
Yeah, and I think you have a very interesting history. You worked with DoorDash, eBay, Sears, so you have a lot of physical retail, grocery, you have marketplace with retail, we have grocery delivery. So what was your biggest learning out of the
I think a tremendous amount of learning, right? So Silicon Valley in general is a great training ground because you test a lot. You learn a lot, you break things, you move fast, you take risks, but it all teaches you and it shapes you on the path you want to go down, right? And it teaches you it's okay to fail at something, right? So I think you try new things more and unabashedly. Retail with Target and Sears taught me more about large-scale enterprises, department store, customer experiences, planogramming, merchandising, pricing, all of that. Because I started in strategy, then became GM of P&Ls, managed categories and businesses from there. At eBay and at DoorDash, it was a different experience because it was all about innovation, what's coming up next. It's not about where the $1 billion today are coming, it's about where's the next billion coming from. So it was very forward-looking, it was very innovation, action-driven, where it's not just about testing things for the sake of testing it. What is the learning agenda? What are we really trying to drive out of this? And how does it make the customer's life easier? So putting all of that together, I think it's an interesting sum of experiences, I would say.
And that's why I'm so glad that we can have this chat.
No, thank you.
Today you are at Altair, VP of Omnichannel.
Yes.
And I mean, you said it. You grew up in UAE, United Arab Emirates. Yeah. Then you moved to the US. Now you're back in the VP Omnichannel role. Yeah. How are those markets different? And what's your role at Altair? What are you doing every day?
I think the markets are dramatically different, right? So if you look at North America has... the market shift has just been longer, larger, and prolonged in the US because they started very early. You have this whole Silicon Valley base where years ago people said it's okay to burn, $10 million trying to build the next big thing. In these markets, it wasn't the case, right? These markets have been conservative, results-oriented, and have not tested as much. But that is now changing. So that's the dramatic shift that I'm seeing. Coming from North America, I think the market, the level of innovation, the level of analytics, the detail, the actual scale of how things would happen are different because these markets are also smaller, right? So when you look at a Middle East Africa market, it is still smaller than the North American context of things in that matter. So when you're catering to 380 million people in the US alone, your scale is much different than it is here. I think the mindset shift, though, in the Middle East that I've seen is one that is driven by very forward thinking. And so they're trying to be the digital hub of the region. They're trying to be the place where in the region will be called the next Silicon Valley of the region, right? And so that mindset shift is allowing them to say, let's take the risk, let's place big bets. And so if you look in Abu Dhabi with what G42 is doing in general with sovereign cloud and pre-site and analytics and data and AI, and one of the biggest Stargate complexes outside of the US is going to come into Abu Dhabi now.
Oh, wow.
And Abu Dhabi being the capital of the UAE in general. So I think there's a lot of foresight being put into where that investment goes and what it will drive. And Dubai's always been one of those leading places where a lot of smart talent comes in. They hone their skills more and they help build that market out, and then they call it home over time, right? So I think there's a massive shift. I think we were called in the Middle East an emerging market for a very long time, but I think that is rapidly going to start to change. We'll still be an emerging market compared to North America, European context, but I think as we become the test beds now, with the level of investment that's going into the likes of cloud infrastructure and AI infrastructure, and the number of orders that we're placing with NVIDIA chips, right? It's insane. So I think the next gen technology and innovation is going to come from the Middle East. I strongly believe that.
And I mean, I'm working a lot with the region since years, and I saw it growing. I saw a lot of capital, a lot of investment, a lot of tech companies like us, Salesforce, moving to the region, infrastructure providers like AWS opening up data centers. So I can see it. Also, let's say, the tech side is responding to that and building up the infrastructure.
100%, right? I think that where there's opportunity, you need the infrastructure and the ecosystem to actually back it up, right? So I think in the region, having the likes of a Salesforce, an IBM, an Adobe, a Google, an AWS, it speaks volumes of where the region is going to go. Because this wasn't the case, even like 5-6 years ago, 7 years ago. They had small investments, which they would call as a presence in the market. But now it's no longer a presence, it is their existence, right? It is their growth engine now. So the massive mindset shift as well, for sure.
Cool, very interesting. So before we deep dive into your role, maybe I'm not sure if our listeners know how the region works from a retail point of view. You're working for Al Tayer, there's many different family-owned businesses. There's Shaloop, GMG, Gulf Marketing Group. Maybe can you just quickly explain in 30 seconds how this works, how a Western brand like Nike, for example, is able to enter the market, or a Swiss brand like IWC. How does that work?
Perfect, yeah. So when these big brands come into the market, they basically need distribution and authorized dealerships, right? And some of these brands have been in the market for decades. And so they were grandfathered into agreements with local big family houses that had malls, real estate, and stores to do distribution or build distribution channels of. And over time, obviously with the advent of e-com and everything else, those business models have evolved to now become an omni-channel operation where you will have the store through a distributor, and that distributor may also then start to manage your online business, or it could be fully owned, or it could be a joint venture where basically it's a subscription model and you have a rev share model with that, right? So brands today are also coming in directly, but I think when they need the scale of distribution across the region, they generally find one of these large-scale retail family houses or conglomerates rather that can help them very easily get into a joint venture across the region, right? And some of these large family conglomerates, they're not just retail for fashion per se, right? They could be retail for automotive, they could have fashion, they could have a bank, they could have real estate, they could have fintech companies. So there is this ecosystem that they built within themselves, which is super helpful for brands to come in.
Got it. So you can't basically enter the region without doing a joint venture with one of those conglomerates.
I think it's changing over time, where you can have 100% ownership as well. But I think the easier model, and what has been over decades, is basically coming in with a large scale partner that helps you expand across the region. Because otherwise, you go into one country and then you have to build that country, then another country, then another country. So it just catapults costs into no man's land, right? But when you go with a large-scale distributor, the costs are then shared.
Got it. Okay, so there's UAE, there is those conglomerates, one of them is Al Tayer, and there's you, VP Omnichannel. So what keeps you up at night in these days?
How do we drive business?
Profitability?
Profitability, the business in general, how do we grow it? How do we service the customer better? How do we make sure that we are meeting the customer's needs, we're understanding them, and we're there where the market is, and we don't have to be reactive, we are proactive in leading the market in terms of dynamics and the change, right? Of not just customer behavior, but also how commerce in general and the whole rails change from payments to logistics to actual supply chains. And so that's what's keeping me up at night in terms of how do we drive that change and how do we be at the forefront of it? How do we be that change rather than just asking for it, right? In terms of when you look at the market dynamics, right, luxury retail, luxury fashion has changed quite a bit. So today it is all about customer experience, and it's not about the bag you sell, it's not about the watch you sell, right? I think it's more about how you sell it, how you speak to that customer, knowing the customer. So I have to know Nino for who he is. I have to know Nino for Nino's likes and dislikes, and understand that personality, and understand why this luxury watch or this bag is a reflection of Nino's personality, right? Because I don't think it's a money game and a commodity game anymore. I think it's more about what it says about you and how it makes you feel. And a lot of times, and theoretically, neurologically, this has been proven, people buy luxury goods because they think they get that feeling or respect back when others see it, right? So they're not actually doing it for themselves to have this commodity, but it's more for how it makes them feel about themselves, right? But I think that is something that you need to really understand from a human dynamic. So that customer experience angle is prime importance. I think when you look at AI today, it is no longer an expectation. I think it's not something that people are experimenting with. They're now saying we're going to set up the entire business around it, right? So I think it's a very basic expectation going into the next couple of years.
Okay.
And I think that relevance and contextual relevance becomes far more important today than it ever was before, because you've got different sort of generations now shopping your brand per se, and they have very different experiences. They could be, one generation could all be all about value, another one could be about ecosystem and the green earth, and there could be another one that's just like, I want something that is super rare, super exclusive, and only the top 0.5% of the population can have it, right? Very different needs across that spectrum.
Well, it sounds like there are a lot of, let's say, target groups you have to create an omnichannel journey for.
Yeah.
Right? You mentioned AI, and I think AI is on top of mind for everyone. I mean, NVIDIA skyrocketed again, if you've seen the numbers.
I should have bought the stock early.
Me too, so I need a better predictor for those stock surges. How is on the consumer end? How is the AI adoption? Because you mentioned expectations. How is the adoption with the consumers in this market?
It's a very tech-savvy market. So from what I'm seeing from the Middle East versus, say, North America, and a really good anecdote, right? Every time we speak to any of the brands and we say in the Middle East, 70, 80, sometimes even 90% of the business comes from an app, a native app, not even web app, not a web wrapper, but a native app. They're shocked.
Wow.
Because for them, it's less than 40%, right? For them,
native, it's a mobile website typically, right?
Yeah, it's mWeb or it's the website in general, right? And even though it's on mobile, but it's web application, not a native app. And in the Middle East, we've got, people joke about this. People say that we've got more apps than humans, right? Using it. And even the smartphone penetration, the internet penetration is so high in these markets that native apps become very natural in how people use stuff for their daily life and how it gels in. So that is something that brands need to truly understand as they build things out in the North American context, right? So this market, extremely tech savvy. This market is, I think, heavily comp shopped, because the same products are sold.
What does comp shop mean?
Comparative shop, sorry. Comparative shop.
Okay.
So essentially, the same product or merchandise is sold in multiple places. And so people will start to look at, obviously there may be some exclusive lines and variations, but the customer will cross-shop across multiple platforms. And that's the beauty of doing it online versus in a store. When you're in the store, you're in physical four walls, and you're sort of, your viewpoint is restricted to where you are. But online, it's open season.
Full transparency.
Yeah, full transparency. You have the price, you have the same commodity, and also online, you can actually cross-border ship from another country, right? If they're shipping into the country. So you literally get a much larger vantage point of where the assortment is, what the best price is, and where it's coming from. And I think that's why staying competitive is super important in that online space. also with ChatGPT, with OpenAI and Perplexity and Gemini, I think one of the reasons why all of these guys are moving very quickly to start to deploy models is because the consumers are now using it more and more for daily search, daily research and education and understanding. So still today, I would say from a commerce perspective, when you want to buy something and so you have a we call it the long tail search, right? It's very clear. You want the Boss tracksuit that is light blue, wool silk linen mix.
Which suit are you talking about?
Wool silk linen mix.
Yeah.
So that's a long tail high intent search. You will not do this on ChatGPT, right? You will literally go to the department store website or a brand's website to do it. But when you're searching for something to say, I need a recommendation for this, or I'm traveling, I need you to build me this. And that itinerary could have merchandise like backpacks if you're traveling somewhere, or it could just have research of what to wear and where to go. That is now largely starting to generate on generative prompt engines, right? And this is where I think Google's trying to build in Gemini into Google search, so that when you do search for product or merchandise, it also gets AI tagging to it. So Google there slightly has that advantage, I would say. Amazon has still always been one of the top researched websites for product searches.
With the reviews, the user-generated reviews,
exactly.
which are summarizing, by the way, with AI, which I like a lot.
And it was super effective, right? Super effective. But I think from a research and education perspective, people are still going to the generative engines. So this is why we need to keep an eye out for it in terms of how commerce will change over time. Because if that becomes the most native search engine over time, then generative engine optimization is what e-commerce players need to start looking at, and not just search engine optimization, right?
Can you see that already? I mean, with all your websites that you have out there, can you see you see where the traffic is coming from? It was Google versus now GPT?
I think a small percentage we're starting to see pop up, right? And I think when you go back, the use case is more around recommendations, right? So gifting recommendations for personal styling will come from some of these generative engines, and then obviously they have links, and then that leads back to the website. But right now I think it's also sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy where, yes, the traffic coming from these generative engines is lower than a normal Google PLA text search, but also are your websites fully tuned in to listening and scraping for that, right? So I don't think it's a two-way street. I don't think both have sort of fully integrated, but you'll see this pump up more and more, because as people start building shopping assistants into their e-commerce platforms, it'll be super interesting to see how all of that data can then be used into building intelligence around customer demographics and what people are buying.
I think it's an interesting thought. Websites today are designed for humans, so humans read the website, and for sure there's a Google crawler. But the question is, in the future, how does a large language model understand a website? And I saw this Karpati talk recently where he talks about how software is changing everything again. I think I can really recommend it for you guys. It's on YouTube. And he said one of the things he can already see is that companies now, if you look at the SEO, search engine optimization in the old days, I mean the last decade, you have, for example, a robots.txt, which is a file on the server, and it describes the website. It describes what to index, what not to index. And he says now he can see already examples where there is an equivalent to the robots.txt with markup. And this markup describes the website in a LLM readable way. So, for example, information, contact, file a ticket, everything, all the actions you can trigger on that website with an API endpoint, so the machine can read it faster and makes it very clear what can I do, which use cases can I fire, get a recommendation for Nino, file a support ticket, claim a warranty case, or whatever. So I think that was a really interesting thought. Not sure if you're thinking about that already. I think it's called GPT engine optimization.
It's generative engine optimization. I think it's super important, right? And but this is what I'm saying. I think this is a space we all need to watch out for, because as this evolves, I think it's not just the agentic AI piece. So there's two parts to this, right? Where you've got agent to tool and agent to agent. So agent to agent is when they're basically generating tasks for themselves, there's a reasoning engine which basically then passes to different agents. And then those agents then interact with different tools. And that's the agent to tool parameter, where they then do the work. It comes back into the agentic layer. Then the agent to agent conversation happens. They reason whether this is the most appropriate answer to give back or not. And the beauty of all of this is it happens in nanoseconds. Right? That's the beauty of this whole thing. And this is why I think this is a space we need to totally watch out for, because it'll no longer just be about schedule appointments for me, schedule my calendar. I think this will be more from a daily task perspective of make that hair salon appointment, right? Make the doctor's appointment. I have gym training at this point. I needed to buy a gift for my anniversary or my kid's birthday, right? So all of that will then just start to get automated, where you become the architect of your daily life just from an ideas perspective. And then you've got these, it's almost like...
It's a personal agent, a concierge.
Yeah, it's like your personal assistant, right? We make this corollary from the movie Despicable Me, right? Where, you know, you've Gru and you have your millions of minions, right? So these agents sort of become like your minions and you become Gru from the show.
Millions of minions.
Yeah, and then you become Gru from that show, right? Which is quite funny, but it's true. This is where it's going, right?
I'm experimenting a lot with Manus. I'm not sure if you know Manus. That's kind of a personal AI agent. And the interesting thing is, it can control a website. So it browses the website like I can, and you can even see a preview how it does. So you can control any website. You can control, for example, a restaurant. I did a restaurant reservation which had no open table, but a contact form.
Correct.
So I tasked Manus to do it, and then at some point it couldn't go further, and it said, "Hey, now I did it, but it seems to be something wrong. You have to take over."
You have to pass it on.
I think that's interesting, because typically an LLM, they all have this contextual issues where they don't learn. I mean, they have an understanding of Nino or my needs in this second, like you mentioned buying a suit, for example, but it doesn't have a long-term understanding. This is Nino, his preference, but those personal AI agents probably will. And then I think for me it's a no-brainer that every search I do for a suit, a holiday, a gift, like you said, I go to my personal AI agent first, and then he does or she does or it does the research from me, and then finally buy with Altair or whoever has the maybe cheapest price for this.
Yeah, and I think that the beauty of this is that as it interacts more with you, as you engage more, as it understands your daily habits, and it's not just about purchase behavior, right? But as it understands your daily habits, it learns, it's fine-tuning, right? Because these are constantly learning models over time. And this is why it starts to get to know you exactly. And this is where the predictive angle comes in. So you've got one which is sort of like cognitive, then there's reasoning, and then there's a predictive layer on top, where it's now predicting what your next best option is going to be, right? And I think that it'll take us time to get there, or even artificial general intelligence, AGI, fully will take us a long time to get there. But I think this is the beauty of it, right? And this is where we need to watch the space, because everything we're learning today is literally going to be obsolete in a week, because in a week it'll have moved on from there. So it'll be super interesting.
Super interesting. We talked, let's say, if you look at the customer journey or the value chain, whatever. So in the customer journey, it would be very early on. We talked about GEO, GPT engine or generative engine optimization. What other impacts would you say AI, and then specifically generative AI, will have on your daily business, on the value chain of a retailer? Where would you say are the biggest levers?
I think it's end to end, right? So today, when a lot of people use Gen AI, and a lot of the buzz is around, it's around marketing, it's about creative content, videos, right? Like the biggest buzz right now is Google's VO3, right? Where it's lifelike videos.
So it's marketing basically. It's a marketing,
it's a lot of marketing.
Impact on marketing.
But I think it'll go beyond that. I think generating forecasts, planning, demand, logistics, right? Connecting it to IoT devices that basically, today IoT devices in a warehouse or in a factory, they're just giving you sensory knowledge of number of units and hours of machine work or breaking points, right? but how does it generate forecast of what the load is going to be, right? That all of those IoT devices can then be connected into a generative engine to do demand forecasting and planning. This also helps people in corporate headquarters from a planning and forecasting team that are running warehouses across a whole country, right? For example, imagine Amazon across 52 states in the US has pretty much 2 warehouses per state, 1 at least at minimum, right? Now imagine all of that has to be plugged in. A while back, when we were basically looking at how do we get, from a marketplace perspective, how do we get the item to the customer from a warehouse in time? And now in a marketplace, not everything is in a warehouse, because it could also be third-party seller driven, right?
Yeah.
So where is the seller? Where is the buyer? Where is the inventory placed? And this one item could actually, like that jacket, could actually be sold on that marketplace from multiple sellers.
Yeah.
So from a forecast perspective, if you've got multiple nodes and you know this is a high selling item, you're able to then drive and say, in New York, based on the run rate, we're going to forecast and demand plan that you need 300 units here. In California, you need 200 units, right? And then you're pushing out into Mexico, the export surplus is going to go up, and so this is how much you need there. But all of those nodes are connected to what's closest to the buyer and how much inventory is there and what is that runtime to get it there, right? So that's one aspect of it. I think logistics in general for freight shipping, freight load, understanding where freight is moving from A to B and what are the cross-dock options, that could be another one as well. I know we use this a lot in general, blockchain, when it started off, when we were looking at farm to table so you go to this plant here, right? Yeah, it's a succulent, but if it was a real plant, it had to be temperature transported from where it came into a van to here, and it could have come from Germany, for example, right? All of that was tracked blockchain. But now, if you add that layer of agentic AI on top, where you've got multiple suppliers, right, and you've got multiple customers or retailers, how do you build all of that into it, right? So I think it's not just about, I want you to shop more. It's about how do I do the work to build efficiencies into my entire cost structure at the back operationally, so that I can give you the best product at the best price at the most convenient time, faster than anybody else. How do I service that need? So it's actually backtracking all the way back into the seed and the root of the operation.
Interesting. Now you, in your role right now at Altair, you're covering Omnichannel. So maybe it's more of, because you just talked about logistics and supply chain, and I get it, there's a lot of cost, a lot of efficiencies to be lifted. And for retailers, I mean, it's all about pushing down costs to improve margin. If you focus a little bit more on the customer journey and your daily life, what's the major impacts there, and on which projects, fill us in, which cool projects you are working on currently?
I think there's a lot. I mean, if I was to generalize some of it, I think we're building a lot of predictive modeling into understanding purchase behavior. We're building a lot of recommendation engines where I would know, so you're a logged in user, right? You're registered, you've logged in, and I know exactly who Nino is. I know your purchase history. I know every click of what you've liked, what you've saved to cart, what's in wish list, what you bought before. And I also know what you've bought for yourself because we have your address. I also know based on data what you've gifted to somebody else based on another shipping address, right? So, and I can look at timelines. Maybe it was a birthday gift because it had a gift packaging messaging and stuff on top of that. But as we're building all of that out, I'm able to recommend and predict based on your persona, your profile, your purchase behavior. Maybe could have matched mine, and then cross-sell and upsell more. Build that funnel. If you engage, you go into a different funnel. If you don't engage, you go into a different funnel, right?
And see a different version of the website.
Yeah,
then.
and so on and so forth. And so we're building that out. The recommendation model that we built out, it's actually helped increase conversion just off of the recommendation. I think we saw a blip of like 5.8%, and then it's come down to 3.4 stabilized, but that is still 3x the average website, right?
Okay.
And so we can, with full confidence, say that these predictive models are working. Now imagine I'm able to add reasonability on top and build out this personal shopper where the personal shopper knows your size, your color, what sort of like category lines you like, and then it can basically add to cart for you. It's made the decision to say all of the hard work and the brain power is done. All you have to say is yes, no, right? How do you simplify it to that level? and truly be a personal assistant. That's the piece. It's no longer just about doing like FAQ bots of where's my order, why is it delayed?
I think that's where the majority of retailers currently look at. Like, how do I get my customer service operations more efficient and faster? With deflecting cases.
I think that's very basic, right? I think it's needed, of course. So, with all due respect to all those retailers, it is absolutely needed. It's very basic. But is that what a personal assistant is? Is that what a personal shopper is?
No.
I think to truly personalize to you and to truly be an assistant, it needs to have that ability to basically go from 0 to 95 in terms of decision making. And the last 5, because that's where your card's at checkout, right? That decision should not be made by an agent. Unless you want it to, you could program that as well.
Sure.
But that decision should be solely yours. So it's literally like, imagine you'd walk into a store and you have a personal shopper or a stylist and they show you all the variations and all you do is yes, no, yes, no. It's as easy as that. But how do you build that real life manifestation into a digital world? That's where I want to go with it over time. So you like something, it's out of stock. You wanted to gift somebody, I want to gift my mom a bag and I can't find the right color or I couldn't find the right bag. It's in my wish list, right? And that's the whole point of the wish list. I wish to have it. Shopping assistant should know that immediately it's back in stock, or immediately the color, your size, it's back in stock. It should add it to cart and say yay or nay, right?
I think this will also impact massively how we look at websites today. Because today, I mean, you build everything on Commerce Cloud. Composability, I think, was a big thing. But it's the website, and you personalize it for the personas you said. But those concierge or bots are still, let's say, a bar on bottom right. But in the future, I think we will see websites that...
They will run the website.
Yeah, exactly. They run the website, they can interact, they can change the website in real time, they can curate a microsite for you. They pop up if you have the wish list is, to your point,
I would love for it to go to that level, right? I think in my previous company, I worked for a mobile app company. And I think that, again, large conglomerate, right? One of the goals was, how do you infuse AI into the app where it builds your app your way for you, right? And so literally I'm using 3 functions out of 5. Just show me the 3. I don't need to use the other 5, right? Only when I need it, it can pop up. And that way then you personalize it to say, my app is completely different than your app. And this is where we want to go. So obviously, coming back to the North American, Middle East context, right? In North America, we've done this 4 or 5 years ago, where it's fully personalized. So when you open the app for any commerce site, it's personalized to you. You see a very different homepage, I will see a very different homepage, right? This is where I want the luxury market in the Middle East to go over time, where if I am consistently shopping beauty or bags versus kids versus men's, I need it to be personalized to me, where when I open my app, because I've logged in, you know everything about me, it should open it to my preferences first, then do cross-category and complementary categories, because you still need to sell other stuff, right?
Sure. Yeah, and I think to your point, and you can also see it in software development, and I think there is this concept of fluid or dynamic UIs in the future. It can not only generate a great text for you or a great image, it can compose in real time the whole interface for you.
Absolutely.
Perfectly designed. I mean, you just gave that example, so I think I like that thought. So let's fast forward maybe 2 years and have a look on Altair.
I think hopefully, well, 2 years I think is a short time span. I think it'll take us longer to get that, just being realistic. But this is where I think the market should go eventually, right? Because the whole point of commerce is to be personable. The whole point of commerce is to understand the need and service the need. So if my need is different, why is my website not different for me, right?
100%.
I think it'll take time to get there, but I can see it going there.
Yeah. So I think very interesting discussion. We are slowly approaching the end of our conversation, but one thing I think what we not touched upon yet was, and you are coming from the retail world, I mean Sears, eBay, Virgin Mobile, short stint in a different industry. Everything is around data these days. Also Altair, in your role right now, you have physical POS data, you have probably a loyalty program, you have a newsletter database, you have a service operation. There are so many data points.
We have all of online purchase data.
Purchase data, real-time click data, click streams. So I think also in my daily life, when I work with my customers, I see this as a big obstacle. And my personal feeling is we're talking about data and unification of data for years, but if you look really under the hood, and this is a prerequisite, by the way, for the data stuff, because you shit in, shit out. What's your viewpoint on data, and to maybe go one step below this, data lakehouse, data warehouse? So how does this look in the future from an architectural point of view in order to be ready for what's coming in AI?
So I think at first, when we looked at AI, right, it was always structured data because it needs to be indexed and be able to easy to read. But I think now with a lot of social engagement data coming in, a lot of clickstream data coming in, a lot of voice and conversational commerce data coming in, I think a lot of this is unstructured. You have to understand the context out of it. Large language models are a very clear example. You have to understand the context because the way I prompt or you prompt or the way I speak or you speak could be very, very different. So it has to be trained to understand context and then build the answer on top of that. And then obviously train it on top, right? So what we've done is over time, we've got obviously all of the data lake for us is huge. It's got all of our POS data. Online was small, it is growing now. So we used to have a data mart for it before, but now we sort of built a data lake house where we've got structured, unstructured data all together. So it gives us the capacity of a hybrid data warehouse and a data lake together. But then we've got our orchestration model sitting on top of that. So as real-time data comes in, our orchestration model sits on top of that and sifts it aside for what is clickstream, what is engagement, where does it need to go, and then synthesizes that to build the full view of what happened in the store for Nino, what happened online for Nino, if you're a loyalty member, what's happening there, and bringing all of that in. And this is near real time. So when I say near real time, we're talking about trickle feed like every 5 minutes-ish, right? But what I want to be able to get to over time is literally you've walked into the store, you've bought that jacket, just the jacket. I've given you an e-receipt on the app. As you're walking out, within 5 minutes, I've given you a full shop the look where the jacket goes with the t-shirt, the sneakers, and the pants. And I'm able to cross-sell, upsell. I've given you a full service model on it, but it's near real time. And I've done it based on the model which analyzes market basket of all of the customers that bought the jacket. There was a 98% predictability chance. And it's all data, it's all math at the end of the day. That they bought the t-shirt, they bought the sneakers, and they bought the pant, right? And that's what I'm going to show Nino because he matches that profile. And if you engage, great. Like I said, you go into a whole different funnel. Your engagement metrics change. You will be shown different things. If you don't engage, then you go into a different funnel and you're shown different things, right? So I kind of feel like that's where we need to build. Data needs to be clean and data needs to be complete. Completeness, cleanliness, and missing data parts, I think they're all very different things. A lot of people very easily complain about how the data is wrong, right? But you have to understand what is wrong with the data first. You have to understand how you've built your query out, how you're querying and prompting the database, but also what context are you building around it, right? And I think the fabric that we're building, and I call it a fabric because you know how like the different threads are intertwined in fabric. Each of your touch points and your engagement points are each thread, and it intertwines across every touch point on the website, the app, in store, via CRM and marketing, or activation elsewhere, loyalty programs, bringing all of that in, right, is crucial. And so I think all of that data needs to be analyzed, indexed, put together to build your profile. But this is not something that happens overnight. This has to be your DNA, right, for the customer. So you have to spend a lot of time building it.
Well, that sounds like a big task. And why do you think many retailers fail to? Because what you just said, I mean, that sounds very complex, very resource intensive, a lot of new type of resources, engineers, data scientists probably, like cloud infrastructure experts. Why do many retailers fail? I mean, you and your old role at Sears, what do you think? What's the big obstacle?
I think it's the understanding of the complexity. I think people don't understand how complex it really is and how much attention it really needs. And when they don't understand it, for them it's just like, it's a report. Get me the report, right?
Get me the dashboard.
Yeah, get me the dashboard, build me a report. What they don't understand is the data is the underlying building foundation for anything you do across your company. And when you start thinking data first, you forget about what department or organization it is. You forget about whether it's logistics or supply chain or buying or marketing or store or online. You think about it as a signal, right? What is this really telling me? Is this telling me something about my business? Is this telling me something from the customer's angle, my angle, operational efficiency? All it is a marker, it's a signal. When you start using those effectively, then you build out agendas for efficiency, for productivity, for customer experience, to drive business. A lot of people don't understand that nuance, and therefore that amount of attention isn't there. And it's also very technical. So if you look at a lot of the leadership, right? The leadership across most of the industries has come ground up, but innovation has caught up really fast. And so for them to sort of like build that skill set is not always easy. And understandably, it's not always easy. So they will have specialists. So you'll have a CIO, a CDO, or a CTO to start to build all of that out. They need the full autonomy and the governance model to say, go build it, clean it, you have 2 years, and then come back and show us efficiency. But also you need to do it in a deliver small, deliver often model where you are showing the value as a CDO, as a CTO, you're showing the value back and educating. So a large part of this role of a CTO or a CDO is not getting the technology right. It is actually educating people the right way. And that part, in many cases, is missing.
And that's not purely a technical role. I mean,
No,
you can hire the best tech person if you, because that has a lot to do with interpersonal skills.
100%. I think personally, I'll speak from personal experience. I'm learning myself as I go because there's across different companies, different organizations, different regions, people understand technology very differently at different degrees. And so how do you build the right narrative to understand what are the key things that this person needs to understand for me to be able to educate them in that manner, right? Some people may need a lot of detail, some people may need no detail. So how do you vary to be able to connect the dots between business, the need, the efficiency, and the technology that will drive it? Because it is the backbone at the end of the day.
Great. So I think that was an amazing conversation, Sumit. Last question, we always ask the same question in our podcast. What would be your advice if you can talk to a CEO and give them one advice? What would it be?
Wow, that's a...
CEO in retail.
CEO in retail.
In these days. I mean, coming from your background, and maybe it's AI.
I would say data first. A lot of customer first companies fail because they're not data first. If you are data first, you can be everything first. You can be customer first if you wanted to be. You can be logistics first. You could be marketing first. You could be merchant first. But if you are not data first in your DNA, none of that will work. So totally for me and from my experience, and a lot of CEOs even talk about it today, a lot of CDOs talk about it today, where it sounds really cool and it sounds good and it sounds very endearing to say we're a customer first organization. But what does that really mean? And you understand the what of I want the best experience, best in class, stickiness, loyalty, whatever. But how? It's the how you drive it. That's all data. So if you are a data first organization, you will understand your customer better. You will understand your operations better. And you will understand how you're going to meet that expectation better and more efficiently.
Oh, cool. That was great advice. Sumit, thank you. So let's revisit and come back in a year or two and see what you've built.
Hopefully we'll be in a better place. Thank you so much, Nino. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.